Rhys, tough way to lose a game there. After what was a thrilling game for the neutral, we came out on the wrong side of it. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it was a tough one. It was a tough one. I think, like I said, it's hard. It's hard to reflect too much on it. I think probably the bit that makes it probably difficult is the fact that we're in a position to come to a place like Batley away, regardless of Batley's form, grand finalists last year, to come away and feel like it was ours to lose. I felt like we were in positions there to win that game, but we just didn't handle things correctly in real simple key moments of the game, and that's ultimately been the story so far. Is just understanding the ramifications for some simple small choices in a game, and understanding the knock-on effect that can have on the result. I think it's magnified greatly in Championship compared to League One, and it's an ongoing process. Understanding that, but ultimately, great game of footy for spectators. I know Linners had a good chat. Linners was smiling ear to ear, and credit to Batley. I mean, they had a great performance there. They played with a lot of energy and a lot of endeavour, but ultimately, I think we could identify a few areas in that game that if we make some simple choices to do something slightly different, that's we probably the result is probably in our favour. And that's the biggest thing probably to identify is just have a look at those little areas of the game. And I suppose the positive thing, they're not talent related. They're not talent related. I believe we have the talent to be in this division. I believe we have the ability to be in this division. It's just that learning curve, isn't it, of playing first grade.
There were some standout players today. What looked like Dane Chisholm handled things. Marshalled the boys around the field. Took the drop goal really well. You've got to be pleased with some of the individual performances, but ultimately, the team are looking like they're gelling. A lot of whistle as well this afternoon, which was a different type of game to what we've had so far this year. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of improvement. We are getting a lot better. This was a better performance than it was last week against Newcastle. I think the difference is in Championship, the different sorts of teams. And ultimately, Newcastle, the performance versus Newcastle last week would not have got us the win today. So even though we had a better performance, it wasn't good enough to beat Batley away at their joint. I think that's interesting and interesting to watch the progression and watch them learn. Good example is Widnes. The performance against Widnes wasn't good enough to get us the win, but a slightly better performance was enough to put 40 on Newcastle.
Yeah.
A slightly better performance wasn't good enough to get a win here. So we just have to get to a stage where our performances are at the standard of which we can pick up these sorts of points and not be losing these games. But yeah, it's a learning curve, isn't it? And I think a few of the more of the boys are picking it up now than aren't. I thought there was some decent performances today there, and ultimately it's becoming easier to see where it's breaking down. So it's just a matter of just continuing that process of tidying that up and working through that and getting the information across to the players. And then got another challenge this week, don't we?
Yeah, we've got London visitors on Sunday. So again, another 3 days you've got with the players to turn that into a performance again next week at home. Do we have any injury worries from today?
I don't think so. Obviously, there'll be a few sore bodies. There was a couple that obviously picked up niggles from last week, but they got through the game today, which was pleasing to see. But yeah, we'll review this tomorrow. We'll have a look at this and we'll identify the areas to improve, and we'll look to improve those because London are a good team. And London compete. They do really well. I know Mike Eccles, the coach down there, he was head of performance in S&C when I was down there, and his attention to detail, and he makes sure his teams work hard. And obviously, I know he's coaching now, which is probably slightly different, but essentially his teams work the same way that we're used to in the gym, which is a high level of detail and a high level of discipline, and they execute quite well. So we're going to have to be on because it's going to be competitive next week.
Well, Rhys, it was a fantastic spectacle today. Unlucky on the result, but we will go again next week.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.